Hello, everyone, and welcome to Learn Plus, this monthly LinkedIn live program where each month we focus on one skill that can help you, one actionable skill that can help you build your professional skills, your leadership skills, and your communication and teaming skills. This month, for the next few months, actually, I'm going to be doing a deep dive into the concepts related to story and storytelling. So we're going to be looking at what are we talking about when we talk about storytelling? When would we use good stories? Why would we use stories? We'll get into some really different types of stories, from personal life stories that you might use in various scenarios, historical stories, and how you can weave those into your communication efforts. We'll look at how you use data as the main character sometimes, even quantitative data as your main character. So lots of storytelling, including how do you get to know yourself well enough to tell your own best story. You can use those kinds of stories when you're in a promotion situation or a interview situation. So lots of storytelling on the forefront here in the next few months. As you're logging in, and welcome, by the way, to everyone. So good to see you. Let us know where you are coming in from today. I'm in Midwestern part of the United States, where it is rainy and gray in a January day, but not freezing ice and rain and snow. So I'm going to take my weather and be happy about it today. We will be today we're looking at a very specific kind of story, and that is scenario-based stories that can help take your training to the next level. Now, this could be training, whether you're just coaching someone one-on-one, you've hired some new people and you need to get them trained, and you're doing that as sort of an on-the-job training experience. Whether you train or educate small groups or even huge groups, whether you train face-to-face or online, synchronous or asynchronous. The tool today, these recorded vignettes, these scenario-based recorded vignettes, are something that Tatiana Kolovou, my colleague, and I have been using hundreds of times in the various trainings that we've done over the years. And we're here today to talk about when we use them, how you might create these yourselves in a very low tech or high tech sort of way, and some tips for that, as well as why we use these. So that's the direction that we're headed today. I see people are logging in. Oh, good. Dr. Renner's here in Indiana too. Welcome. Jay is with us. Always great to see you, Jay. We've got Egypt in the house. West Michigan's here. That's great. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody here in all our different time zones. So good to see all of you. Well, yeah, West Michigan, great. Thanks to be here. Jocelyn's having similar weather because she's Midwestern too. Let's get Tatiana Kolovou in here. I think many of you know Tatiana. Tatiana has a number of courses in the LinkedIn library. She and I have co-authored 3 of those LinkedIn courses together that we encourage you to watch as follow-up. If you haven't already, again, I see a lot of familiar faces. Tatiana, hello, welcome.
Happy New Year, Learn Plus. This is your first live of the year, right?
Oh, it is. That's right. Thank you. Did you set New Year's resolutions? What's your feelings on resolutions?
Feeling good about resolutions.
All
Yes.
right.
Making
Very
my lists and checking them off, as we say.
You can see the stream of where all our friends
Yes.
are coming in from here. We've got Omaha, Council Bluffs.
Always
We've got
great.
Wisconsin. This is great. Yes. And Dr. Renner is giving you the thumbs up. He knows you from some of our work together. That's great.
Back in Germany from Omaha. Sorry, I don't know which weather is going to be better there.
Well, Tatiana, I thought we would start by sharing some of the various times we've used these recorded vignettes as part of our training and educational efforts. I know some of them that I remember right off the top of my head was when we did customer service for the entire employee set at a bank. Do you remember that one?
Yes. Yes.
When they said we want every single employee to go through training, Tatiana and I kind of took a deep breath and said, how many employees are we talking about? So that was thousands of people that went through months-long training. And we were really trying to find ways to keep that training spicy and interesting and relevant. So we used it then.
Didn't we add the Oscars at the end of our training, we had the awards that we gave away. Or was that the
No,
unit?
I think that was it, because one of the tips we'll talk to you about is that we use local sources as our local talent as our.
Challenge.
So the employees of the bank were the actors in these vignettes. And
Yes.
so we did a whole Oscars ceremony for all these various people who had been brave enough to stand in front of the camera and do a little vignette play with us. So the big bank customer service.
We did customer service for Ball State University,
University,
remember?
yes, right? That was
And
another, every employee, every staff and faculty member went through that.
I wish I had the picture. It's somewhere in my phone. Remember, we had the school mascot show up and do a vignette with me where I was like, what are you talking about? Because he doesn't have a voice.
Right.
So Charlie Cardinal, I was translating, you mean this? Do you remember that?
I
And so
do.
we had the mascot. People loved it. It was so original. And this, my friends, is before these were out. This is how we're dating ourselves. I think I had a Palm Pilot at the time.
Oh
I
my
didn't even have
gosh.
a flip phone. It was probably 15 years ago.
Oh, at least.
More.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we mentioned 2 customer service examples. We've used it for a lot of other topical trainings, though. We did a lot of work with financial professional services and people in financial services. And we did beyond just banks, though, but accountants and financial folks at a Fortune 500 company. We've used video vignettes in those to talk about difficult conversations that people need to have. To talk about, we've demonstrated even like good listening through and what good listening responses look like versus not such great responses.
And quite often for everyone who's attending today, Brenda and I are the actors, the talent, because
with no acting background, mind you.
Yes, 0. We know what we want to demonstrate, and it's easier. And sometimes with LinkedIn, they don't have to hire the actors to come down to Carpinteria and get in the studios, and that needs a lot of direction. And at times, I think the last time we did it was there was a strike, so it came in handy. We've used our children, and they'll probably be in counseling.
I think one of them will make an appearance today, Tatiana.
Oh, that's right. Yours too. What else have we done? And we at times have also used high-level leaders. Yes. Maybe that's not vignettes, but coming in and giving a message when we want to ride on their credibility and having them come in and say something, we can use that and send the message stronger. So there's lots of reasons, as Brenda said, that you should be using if you're doing training or if you're teaching or if you're breaking something down, of having people actually see it. Today we'll share why that's important.
Yeah, well, you've mentioned one of those reasons why is that it builds credibility sometimes to have these more realistic vignettes. It's not just oh, you're talking theory or you're talking this leadership model or this teaming model, but people sometimes, I think, push back and say, yeah, but you don't understand our real scenario. You don't understand our real life. And boy, then when it is their real life, it's a vignette just stripped right out of an actual experience that they've had or that they've lived through. I think that does lend credibility to the coaching or the training that you're trying to do. What are some of the other reasons, though, that we use these vignettes?
We talk a little bit about, both of us are academics, so we design with learning theory in mind. And I'm not talking about just an auditory learner or a visual learner. If you've ever seen, Shelby, if we can share Bloom's taxonomy of kind of how people understand content. Initially, to understand something, maybe they need to remember it. So you teach it to them. But as you move, if you're learning something from the bottom of the pyramid, if I'm creating a way I want people to remember something, I may have them memorize. But as we get to the very top of the pyramid, I want them to create something with the knowledge they have. But if you look under remembering, understanding more, and then the green levels of applying and analyzing, both video helps explain a concept because it's applicable to a real world, to the audience scenario. And then because there's back and forth or a person is thinking, there's more analysis that plays out. If you were doing training or teaching correctly, eventually you would have your learners create a scenario and script it out. That's at the high level, because as you'll hear Brenda share today, you have to have learning objectives. When they watch something, 2 to 3 things have to pop out.
Yeah.
Just any time we create learning videos for LinkedIn, we do the same. So we're going to share, I think Shelby's sharing on the feed, the Bloom's taxonomy. If you're creating anything, even sending out something simple for your staff or your group to learn that's new, be thinking about how people learn. Do you want them to remember? Do you want them to understand something? Do you want them to further apply it, analyze it? So that's where we're coming from.
So much of our training and coaching or education, we want people actually at that applying level. We don't want you to just know it. We want you to be able to execute or to act on it. And so that gets us into that application. And that's where these learning vignettes or these training vignettes are so helpful. You can almost accomplish the same thing through role play in class and training experiences. But we've found people to be so resistant to role play. They just feel so uncomfortable and awkward. Yeah, stepping into role play. That video takes that robustness of a role play, but takes out the awkwardness of it, because we're watching and interacting with it, but not having to be the role players ourselves, which tends to. So we can kind of step them into it. We'll talk more about that when we look at ways to use these vignettes. But so today I thought, Tatiana, we could talk about a little bit more about how we actually create these, how we source them, how we write them, and then how we use them in training situations so that people have a chance to explore that for themselves and get some tips maybe. Does that work?
I'm curious for the learners who are joining us here today, if they prefer, because as we're sharing this, I'm throwing this out here, Brenda, sometimes we do video, sometimes it's effective just to even do audio. If you hear a conversation, and then that makes it easier for you to record 2 people speaking if they have to read between the lines or sense a tone of voice, especially if people are interacting with others and you're trying to connect with them. I wonder how, if our learners learn better by incorporating video or vignettes, if they learn better through that. I know with our LinkedIn learning courses, we get tremendous feedback on vignettes that we add, other ones we do ourselves, and I know you'll share some examples, Brenda, or maybe ones that include actors.
Yeah. The audio is interesting. I think sometimes if phrasing, word choice is what we're trying to get our audience to focus on, audio can be better because all of the attention is focused in on those words. Frequently, the kinds of topics Tatiana and I are dealing with, the nuances of your nonverbal are almost as important as the words. And so then obviously you need that video component to see what was happening with the facial expressions, what was happening with eye contact, with body posture. But yeah, if your training objective is we want you to focus on language and wording or phrasing, then I think audio only is a great option.
Kimberly says, we have incredible vignettes. Thank you, Kimberly. We have a lot of fun making them. I do want to interact too and say, if you haven't watched our course called Communicating in Times of Change, the backstory of that course is we went to LinkedIn ready to do head moving, talking head, as we say on the screen. And we looked at each other and said, this is boring. Let's flip it. So we went with the story that you see in that course, where I was the hapless manager thinking that I could communicate change to the employees and they would be thrilled. And Brenda plays the wise Yoda advisor that says, really, is that what you think? So then I go back and I try some things, and we acted the whole thing. And I wish I have some pictures of the 2 of us. We're not even reading teleprompters. We're sitting with pieces of paper taped where you can't see them from the camera, with bullet points of things we need to hit that we say. When Brenda shares how you do this, you have to have certain learning objectives you're hitting. You can't just ad lib something. And it was hilarious. We had a lot of fun. And I'm still waiting for my Oscar in the mail.
I think you're going to have to keep waiting because, we win no Oscars, but we do some great training. That's the points we get there. So, so let's talk about some of the tips then on creating these. So Some of these can be really low tech. So let's just remember that you don't have to have a whole LinkedIn studio. And I mean, it's lovely when we have that, the professionals there with multiple cameras and teleprompters, all of that is delightful, but that's not the reality for most of us. And most of the training that, especially if you're doing a quick one-on-one with somebody, you can still use a quick vignette, but you don't want to expend an incredible amount of energy and time filming it. And you don't have to. You can always just do some low tech filming, which we'll talk about. So first of
Low
all,
tech filming
low
right
tech
here.
filming, the phone, right? But sourcing. So she mentioned that we grab people, colleagues. Our own kids have been in videos with us, the neighbors, the people that were at the store where we were filming. I think one of the best sources, though, are people that you think will be participants in the training that you're sponsoring, because then they are so invested early on because they're the star of the show. Whether they take sort of the wise Yoda, they're acting it out right, or even if they're demonstrating what not to do, they get such a kick out of that. Or if they're having to play an antagonistic role, the manager, the hapless manager, or the grumpy customer, or the grumpy client, they have so much fun with it that then they start inviting their colleagues. It's actually grown training in many cases because more people want to come, even
To
if
show
just
up.
to, yeah, just to show up and see what's happening. It creates a lot of buzz when you're filming. You've got to, even if it's just you and your phone and a couple of people acting something out in a hallway, people are noticing. They're taking notice of that, and it gets the word out about your training. It gets investment, and people start thinking more deeply about those learning outcomes that you have in mind. So that's one of the best places, I think, to source talent for these.
Talent. I think at Centra we even had
That's
a
the bank that we were talking about
bank.
earlier.
Sorry, I may not have used the name, but we even had like an award. We had like a closing ceremony where we played a lot of, and people voted. It was so much fun.
Yeah. So use yourself, use the employees that are actually doing this skill that you're trying to demonstrate, or use the participants that are coming to learn more about it. All of those are great sources.
Can I add here one more?
Yeah.
It's also fun to at times in LinkedIn scenarios. I've been in the cameo, like I walk by, or I'm in the background doing something. So then I'll post something and say, "Do you notice a familiar face in the background?" Or you can put cameos of a vice president, or you can put, if they're playful enough. This is all in the name of learning, but you don't want to make them uncomfortable. But if they're playful enough to want to get on camera, there's more buy-in from the people that are learning. Or if they want to be in a cameo, or if it's the mascot of the university, throw them in there.
Right. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, the fun touches that make almost these little Easter eggs that you plant within the video for people to find, just again, increasing the engagement. So we've got some talent that's agreed to play. Now we have to decide how much we're giving them. Do we actually script, or do we just give them some talking points? What we have found to work best is, as Tatiana mentioned earlier, we start with the learning outcomes. So if we know that at the end of this video and the discussion related to the video, we want people to be able to, we want people to be able to clarify a question. We want people to be able to say no with tact and diplomacy. We want people to be able to disagree agreeably. Now, we have these we have our large learning outcomes, and then we've broken that down. So if it's, I want you to be able to respond with empathy, we know that that's going to mean you're going to non-verbally be responsive or echoing what your conversational partner is doing, that you're not going to sort of hijack the conversation and make it about you, that you're going to practice stating what you heard, both what we think the person said logically, what they're saying, the words they're saying, and maybe to make a guess at what they're feeling about that, and to express both. So we have these more finite skills that are behavioral, that you would be able to see and hear it on the video. We have that sketched out for ourselves before we even start thinking about, okay, those are the learning outcomes. Then what scenario could we craft, could we create where those skills would be most needed?
Or relevant to the audience, because you don't want to do something too generic. You wanted them to realize, yeah, that could be me. I want to jump in and say that by having those outcomes, you don't, and Brenda will talk about this in a little bit, you don't, it's preferable not to have the wrong way of doing it, like infomercial and black and white, and then the right way of doing it. That's a little too much spoon feeding. Quite often you'll see us say, here's where this plays out. What are things that the person did well, and what do they need more coaching in? So remember, we want them to apply what they've learned. Maybe we've shared empathetic listening, and then we say, what were some things that this person did well? What do they need to do better? And maybe then you take a not very bad scenario and then you show one more level up how it can be even better. But we recommend you don't do a bad and a good, because I've learned, especially the younger generation that consumes video in pretty much primarily consumes video, quickly can see through this, and they will shut you down if it's too hokey or too evident, right, Brenda?
Yeah, yeah. If it's just too obvious, all the wrongs are so wrong that
Yeah.
would never really happen in real life. The whole point of the vignette is you want something replicating real life. So in real life, it's usually that it's a mixed bag of some things went pretty good and some things didn't go so
Did not.
great. So those are the best scenarios for creating more conversation, the ones that bring the learners into that reality situation, the ones that really help them see themselves the most. If you have just a total wrong, they know that's not them. They never show up and get everything wrong. But when you show something and they're watching it thinking, well, actually, that looked pretty good. That's kind of
That's
what
what
I
I would
sound
do.
like.
Yeah.
And then you start peeling the layers back and going, they missed an opportunity here. Or yes, they said this, but what if they'd said this instead? They start, they've already identified with this character. And so then it really starts getting them to think about how they could start twisting and changing their behaviors. Looks like maybe we lost Tatiana for a minute. So hopefully she will rejoin us shortly. And I assume she'll be scrambling on the back end to find out why we lost our guest here for a minute. But that's okay. I'm going to keep moving on. So we've talked about writing. Some of the tips that we want to think about are not writing all right or all wrong. Start with the learning goals. And then we actually don't usually script these word for word, whether we're the actors, but especially if we're asking other people to be the actors. Instead, what we put is like, here's the scenario. Here are some of the big chunks of conversation that you need to have. And within this, we need to make sure that at some point in the conversation, hey, welcome back.
Hi.
That at some point, internet problems, who knows? That at some point in the situation, that there is a cue that here's where you need to make sure you look at your phone, because we're demonstrating something you really shouldn't do when you're listening. So there's that cue, and that cue might be, as Tatiana was saying, hanging on a poster board or a flip chart behind the view of the camera, even if the camera is just your phone, where the actor, your employees or trainees can see it, but that the camera can't pick up. And so the cues are just sort of the talking points of rather than a full script. And then in a different color, we usually highlight what the actions are or what we're supposed to be seeing happening in that section. So those are some of our writing tips. Tatiana, keeping them concise is the other thing. Nobody wants.
Yes.
Okay.
By the way, I had a notification. It was audible. I went to turn it off and I shut down the internet. Rookie mistake. So it's not a Wi-Fi. Attention spans are short, and ever since we've started doing these, I think they're even shorter. So we're not talking about anything longer than a minute, friends. Here we're talking about 30. If you can't show it in 30 seconds or in a
couple minutes for a longer dialogue. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Don't go back, because you don't want to belabor it. You even want to have something where you stop and you say, write down 3 things. So you with a partner discuss this, and then let's see what happens next. Even if you continue, did they apply some of this? So don't feel that you have to tell the whole story. You as the facilitator can set it up, and you'll see us quite often do this in LinkedIn videos or in trainings that we do, we say, we're next going to watch this and you will experience. Did you talk about, I wasn't gone too long, but did you talk about using movies or TV
Not
shows?
yet, not yet. Hold
Okay.
that thought though. That's a great suggestion. Yeah. Sometimes you can avoid writing altogether by just using a movie clip, but the movie clip has to be spot on to your learning outcomes. And those are hard to find. Tatiana and I have a few favorites, but right now, Tatiana keeps lobbying for this Oscar that she hasn't gotten. I want to show you a piece of her early work where she's
Wait.
actually, yeah, oh yeah, we're going to pull one here where she's actually,
yes.
the other source is my son. This has to be 15 years ago because he's a grown adult. And in this, he looks like a teenager, but just look at the low tech nature. And yet, despite the low techness of this clip, you really start to see how we're teasing out the learning outcomes that we had for this vignette. So, Shelby, you got our first clip here for us?
Preston Hughes, and I'm trying to find Dr. Smith's office.
Oh, Preston, she's in 313 usually, but she's not in her office right now. Can I help you with something?
Oh, well, you see, I have to get this paper to her by 2 p.m. today.
2 p.m. today?
Yeah.
In person? Do you have to give it to her?
Well, she said she needs to know that it's in here by 2.
Well, I can just put it in her mailbox. Would that be helpful?
No, see, she said she needs to know that it's in here by 2 p.m. And she said we can't slide it under the door because then it could be
all right. I think we get the idea. So we are
I get the job. I'm sorry. I was so attentive. I was so willing to help. I don't know what was, there was nothing wrong with my behavior.
Well, we had another one though where she's checking her phone, she's dismissive, not to an extreme again, but this was a pre and post kind of video. We just we took over the office after everybody had cleared out one night. We, like I said, recruited one of our kids to show up as the student, and to show this interaction in an effort to then help university staff and administrative assistants have better engagement with their students from an interpersonal standpoint. So that's one of our low-tech videos, probably filmed with me and a tiny little camera in the background. Yes, with a little
chip. This is before we were schooled in the LinkedIn lighting university that we've learned more about how lighting makes a big difference. So
another thing that we've done sometimes, it's not even an acted vignette, but I think now the language, because you see it in some comedy television programming and stuff, is that breaking the fourth wall, where we just have an actor or a person speaking directly to the camera. And we've got an example of this that we'll pull up. The audio is not really important on this one, but I just want you to see kind of what it looks like to have just an actor, or in this case, a colleague speaking to camera. Do you want to pull that one up, Shell? There we go.
It's their perspective, right?
Yeah, he's just giving his perspective. Yeah, this is a colleague and friend of ours. And he's talking about a responsiveness issue where he hates getting given the runaround and being told, you got to go to this office. No, now you need to go to this office. Now you need to go to this office. But what we found about breaking the fourth wall is that it adds variety to your training experience. It's not just you talking all the time. It lends credibility because you have these other voices coming in to say in a very authentic way what their experience has been or what they want their experience to be. So these are highly motivational pieces to add to your training.
Can I add here, Brenda, another thing you can do is, if you're filming a dialogue, you could do what they do in the office, where you turn into the camera and say, that's not what I meant. What I meant to say was this, and I wish that she would listen.
Yes.
Go back, you have the dialogue. So it's completely low tech. You don't even have to edit anything.
Right.
But they do it now on television. People are used to it, but that sort of speaking of what's in your head allows for the audience to connect with the learner even more.
Right. So you don't even have to take them out of the vignette back to the facilitator of the training to just keep that mental process, to make the mental process more articulated. I think it's a great example. Yeah. I think Tatiana mentioned in that first one where you saw her interacting with the student, she's like, I did this right and I did that right. And we would have known for sure what exactly she was doing right if we had taken the simple measure of adding subtitles. So we're going to show you a clip from one of our recently released communication tips courses. So this one is filmed in LinkedIn. So you're going to notice a radical difference in the quality of the film from the low tech to the high tech here. But see how much value the simple process of adding a subtitle adds to, and I'm not talking about just the closed captioning, but actually subtitling, so people are seeing in action the very skills that they've learned about as the training opened. So let's watch this one real quick.
That's from our
Thank you
actual
for
course.
taking this meeting. I know your schedule has been slammed.
It's been pretty
Gratitude.
busy, but sure. What's going on?
So I had a meeting with John a couple of days ago, and he said that you went to him and said that you thought I should be running point on the new project.
I didn't go to him. We were having a conversation in the hallway, and we did talk about the project. Yeah.
So the point is that I appreciate your guidance. When you go to John, I feel pressured to do things your way.
I have been working on this project for many years. It's an important project for our clients. It's not about your way, my way. It's just signaling importance.
I agree. I don't want you to quit sharing your expertise. I do want to have the creative freedom to do this in a way that works for me.
Brenda, it's not about you. It's about the client. This is an important project.
I think there are a lot of things that could work for the client. I know one thing that won't work for them, and that's if I'm pretending to be you. I know I'm sounding upset. I want us to keep talking though.
I'm sorry that this makes you upset. This was my opinion. I wanted for you to be involved with the project. John and I were talking about it. That's all.
I guess I need to understand your intentions, because the story I'm telling myself is that you either want to offload your work onto me, or you think everything has to be done your way.
Not true. That is not true. You have the skills. You're a rock star, high visibility project. You would shine taking this project on. That's all.
I appreciate the clarification. I still don't want to do this project.
Okay.
So can we figure out another way that I could show I have value to the team?
Okay.
Okay, that's good.
This was a
So-
hypothetical
and then
scenario,
I come in and
but
talk
over the
about,
Okay.
I come in and
Deep
give
breathing.
a debrief of that, which you can do as part of the video, or that's where you could just stop the vignette and then facilitate the conversation live. But in that, when we were filming that, I think we mentioned this in a post promoting this course. It was really interesting. The camera crews were getting the lighting and the cameras set up, and Tatiana and I were just like, hey, let's just run
Practicing.
through it. And all of a sudden we realized the room had gone quiet, even though there had been this buzz because they were all working and planning. And so we stopped and looked up, and they're all staring at us. And finally, our director, Tony, said, are you guys actually fighting? Are we okay? And we felt so good, because we know we don't deserve any Oscars, but that authenticity piece, except Tatiana, but that authenticity piece really does come through, we hope, in those. But I'm showing that because of the subtitles. So we had talked about 6 to 7 different behaviors that you can engage in when you're having a conversation where you're getting upset, and how do you handle a conversation where you're feeling emotionally upset. And then just boom, 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 right? One after another, you got to see it in action with that label, which reinforces the behavior and brings it to life beyond just hearing about the behavior in a more narrative, conversational way.
So I wanted to point out something, Brenda, that obviously you're teaching how to respond or how to handle a situation, the protagonist. So you could not be doing subtitles on both ends. I am the receiver. So we've decided how I'm going to respond. But if you notice, the subtitles are all Brenda as she's showing these behaviors. How I respond, we're not learning how for me to say, you're a rock star, we want you to do this. That's beyond the point. We want to focus on how Brenda, but I am bouncing some of these things off of her, responding in a certain way. And as you notice, I don't make it as easy. I don't say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. I'm like, yeah, I was talking to him. I didn't go to him, just to make it more real. I also want to add one thing, as you noticed, and this is a standard LinkedIn, just for the needs of all people, so we can be as inclusive as possible for learning. The citations or the closed captioning is turned on. And I've learned, if people are watching something on their phone, maybe they're around others or kids are sleeping, it's helpful to have closed captioning because maybe the words are being reinforced, or maybe they don't have the volume on. And if you have a chance, you saw the subtitles, you saw the closed captioning. I'm always a proponent of being inclusive in your learning when you're doing video. I'm not sure wherever you show it, Brenda. Do you know if on video, if it's on a platform?
Most time it's user can turn if as long as you have
You've
the user
recorded
gets
with
to
the
choose to
option
play.
to use it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But on the subtitles themselves, how do you do subtitling? I know that Shelby, our producer behind the scenes today, has some favorite software platforms that she uses for subtitling. We'll get those in the chat for you to see. Tatiana, how do you actually do the technical piece of subtitling videos, even if you've just zapped it on your phone or something, low tech methodology here for filming and subtitling?
So your typical any software, I don't think on the phone you'd have to take the video and dump it into another app. I like CapCut because it has the ability to edit the video, but then you can put in whatever you want, drop it, very simple, whatever text you want to use. It's used a lot on Instagram videos as well. Again, makes it very easy to add for a short clip of time the video. Any one of your teenage nieces, nephews, or kids can teach you. I learned CapCut. My son taught it to me, and I've really become better at it by using it more. But if you go outside of your video, then you have to, for example, if you use Instagram where you are using the subtitles, you can't, it belongs in Instagram. You'd have to pull it away and then put it on your training video on your platform of your computer. So what you would then have to do if you're using Instagram, you'd have to do a screen record. Every phone has a screen record option. Take that video, extract it as an MP4 that you would use. Other places such as I was just using Collage or sorry, what are some of the ones that we're using? Pic Collage or CapCut. You just upload it straight into your photos and into your videos of your phone, and then you can email it to yourself and save it on your computer. But the subtitles are very helpful and they enhance learning. We will say that absolutely for sure. In fact, sometimes even for LinkedIn, we'll catch the videos and we say, in our notes, we ask for subtitles. We'll highlight something in yellow and they miss it and they'll go back and add it.
Yeah, because it's so important. Notice in chat, Shelby gave you a couple of other software pieces that can help you with your subtitling. Tatiana, let's wrap up today by talking about how we use these videos now that we've sourced them, we've written them, we've filmed them, we've subtitled them.
Yeah.
How do we actually use them once we step into a training event or situation?
Yeah. So many different ways. You can have people analyze them. You can kick off the training with them specifically and have people discuss. You can use them for the whole group to share what they think. Do you have any other ways, Brenda?
Yeah, well, we've talked about the fact that you could show a little bit of a story or a vignette and then just cut it and get the conversation going, get a lot of suggestions, because people always remember more of what they say themselves than of what you've said. So if they're saying, well, maybe they should do that, or what, I think it would have been better if they tried this, that's what's going to stick with them. So we want those solutions to some extent to be coming from the participants in your training. So yeah, I think using it during asynchronous training, then you almost have to bookend it by setting it up, showing it, and then debriefing it yourself. But if you're using some kind of synchronous training, yeah, I love that idea of using it as a conversation starter at the beginning and to get people to start thinking more deeply, more analytically about the issue, not generically, but very specific, because you can then, like if someone says, well, I don't think Tatiana or I don't think Brenda was being firm enough in that video. Well, what could she have said that would have been more firm? Mm-hmm. And now they're having, because some of these, especially the soft skills, as people call them, or the more qualitative skills that we're talking about a lot in the workplace, they're easy to talk about, but they are hard to do. So
Mhm.
once you have that person having to respond to the video, the way they would say it, how they would say it, that's when you really start getting to those more nuanced or finessed pieces of the training.
Or we talk about it in teaching, flipped classroom. You
Yeah.
can start a training by saying, we were going to talk about topics that go back to empathetic listening, but I had a situation the other day that I can't help but not share with you. It was caught on camera, and I won't disclose the company, but listen to this phone call. And now you've set it up pretty much. And you say, here's what I found myself doing. Can we please say the person's name was Jim, that was the service provider. Can we spend the next 30 minutes trying to coach Jim and help him be better? So you start with the difficult one and you start outlining, and you can do your whole teaching this way versus saying, I'm going to start by giving you the best lists of how to verbally and non-verbally listen empathetically. That's more boring than kicking off with something like that.
Yeah.
And
where the content is actually emerging from the group.
Yeah. And maybe this did happen to you and you're reenacting it in a call. So it's really a story that you're telling, and you're taking it one step further. It's better learning, period.
Yeah. So 2 different models to play with depending on the scenario and whether you're asynchronous or synchronous. Setting up the foundational learning just through sort of a small lecturette, then using your vignette, and then debriefing your vignette. That's one model, and it has its pros and cons. And then the other model is leading with the vignette to allow the learning to emerge from your group, and then you are capturing what they're saying. So you're still hitting all of the major learning pieces that you wanted to teach, but just through that facilitation of their conversation. So it's coming from them and not just strictly from lecture. That's great. Tatiana and I have committed this year to film more vignettes.
Oh, yes.
We're so serious that we think that they work, and that they're a great way to train and educate people in an engaging way. But we're curious. We've brainstormed some topics that we think are sort of hot topics right now that might be useful for vignettes, because obviously vignettes are best around topics where dialogue is part of the process, or 2 or more people interacting is a part of what you're trying to teach. So we've come up with some scenarios, but we want you to help us identify which ones you want to see first, which of these topics would be most beneficial to you, so that you can scan that QR code in the top.
I'm going to do it too.
You do it too. You don't get to vote. I don't think
No,
you
but
get
I
to
want to
vote.
make sure I can get to it. So
All
take
right.
your phones out.
Take
Or
your
go
phones
to-
out, scan the QR code, or just type in slido.com if the QR code for some reason doesn't work for you. And then type out that number, the series 9721970. That will bring you to our one survey question, which is, which of these topics would be most beneficial to you to have a vignette that you could use, something that Tatiana and I will film and then put out into the world. All right, so here we go. We're going to get some respondents.
Feedback to appear. Oh, I love that. You know, Brenda, if we drop those into YouTube eventually, maybe we make
People
one of them available to people to use in their training. Maybe the most popular is a freebie.
Get it out there where people can get their hands on it and use it. Now, responding to feedback is also tricky. Okay, I agree. That one.
Yeah.
We had a scenario just recently that we were talking about where someone received some feedback, but the feedback was actually wrong. I mean, what he was being told had been misunderstood, misinterpreted. And so then he was struggling with this idea that, how do I respond to the feedback but not sound defensive, but still say, no, your feedback's not right. You know, it was very complex situation. We spent quite a bit of time hashing through what that might look like. Communicating a change. Yeah. For those of you that are voting in on communicating change, please do watch our LinkedIn course called How to Communicate Change, because it is one, as Tatiana mentioned earlier, it's just one entire vignette with learning modules throughout it. So that might be helpful to you. Still looking like
this is very helpful.
Yeah, it is.
Everyone knows how to deliver bad news. Great. And
They've had
expand
too
the
much practice. They've
caregiver.
had too much practice delivering bad news in the last few years. And they don't make mistakes, is why nobody
No,
wants to
no,
talk
I
about
didn't just
minor mistakes.
click myself out of the session just now. I did not.
Yeah, there we go. We'll keep this open for
Very
another
good.
minute. Thank you, Belinda. I'm so glad it was helpful. I hope that you get to create some videos, low tech or high tech, or scripted or not scripted. We encourage all of you to give creating one of these little vignettes a shot. And then reach out to us on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear what you created and how you used it. We're so curious how that might happen. Kim, you're welcome. Thanks. You're absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Glad that the resources were helpful, Kimberly. Hope you get a chance to use them. We will leave the poll up for just another minute here. I know we've got some other people logged in. All of you who tuned in today, thank you so much for being here as we kick off a new year of LinkedIn Lives with a wonderful focus on storytelling, and improving your communication skills. Tatiana, thank you. It's always delightful to have you on the live.
You're most welcome.
We will keep creating those vignettes for years to come, my friend.
Absolutely.
Thank
Can't
you.
wait.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.